How old is the phone or computer you're watching this video on? Couple of years, maybe? What's happened to your old phone or computer? Chances are it still works fine, and it's probably sitting in a drawer or cupboard somewhere. And here's a problem. With rapid advancements in computers and mobile phones, coupled with them becoming more affordable to more people, demand for the latest version has grown enormously, meaning the amount of electronic waste, or e-waste, generated has grown too. E-waste is electronic items that are unwanted, not working, and nearing or at the end of their useful life. TVs, mobile phones, game consoles, and so on. When a product that used batteries or had a plug reaches the end of its useful life, it's e-waste. So what's the problem? Well, each item of e-waste can contain around 1,000 different materials. Some of these materials are valuable, such as silver, gold, and platinum. Some are rare, americium and europium, for example. And some are extremely hazardous to the environment and public health. So the problem comes when e-waste is stockpiled and improperly stored at home or the office. It creates significant risks to people through the leaching of harmful materials, and it can catch fire. If it just gets dumped, it causes significant harm to the environment. And even if it does end up in a properly managed landfill, it accelerates the depletion of natural resources. So, for these reasons, it's vital that e-waste undergoes environmentally sound management, or ESM for short. ESM simply means taking all practical steps to ensure that used or end-of-life electronics are managed in a manner which will protect human health and the environment, and ensure worker safety. ESM applies to all kinds of waste, whether hazardous or non-hazardous, and all aspects of waste management, including storage, recovery, recycling, and refurbishment. In this video, we're going to look at how to apply ESM to the management of e-waste, its importance, and the benefits of its application in our everyday lives. It accompanies a training manual which you can access from the link below. So, let's start by taking a brief look at the benefits of ESM. Awareness of the need to improve and protect the environment is growing. This is influencing consumer behavior in many ways. It's informing the decisions they make on their purchases, whether for products or services. And people are much more concerned as to what happens to the things they no longer need. Today, more and more people are demanding that their waste is properly treated, that it's reused, recycled, that it doesn't harm the environment. In other words, they're demanding ESM. ESM is a robust indicator that a recycling company is doing the right things in the right way. Remember that people are paying for the services you provide, so companies adopting ESM practices gives those companies a distinct advantage over those who don't. This increases business opportunities, which leads to growth. So, ESM can increase profitability, partly through increased demand, but also through the ability to maximize the value of materials contained within e-waste. And it protects the health, safety, and well-being of your workers, their families, and the wider community. In fact, this is where the process of ESM starts. So let's start there. Almost every item of e-waste contains materials that are hazardous to people and the environment. Mercury is commonly used in LCD screens and switches and causes serious neurological and behavioral disorders if ingested, even in tiny amounts. Flame retardants applied to many electronic devices are made from chemicals that can cause tumors. Lithium batteries can ignite if ruptured and cause a fire that is nearly impossible to extinguish. And that's just 3 examples. There's many more, and you'll find these listed in the training manual. So do take a moment to have a look at these. We also need to consider the state in which items will arrive in. You'll likely encounter cracked screens and damaged casings, which may mean that there are shards or smashed glass, broken plastics with sharp edges and other dangers. And then there's a process of repair, refurbishment, and recycling itself, which also has its own hazards. The inhalation of hazardous particles, use of equipment with rapidly moving parts, sharp objects or pieces with sharp edges flying off. But these can be safely and efficiently dealt with by applying just a few steps. This starts with classifying the risk into two groups: occupational health and environmental concerns. Occupational health refers to the risks that health workers are exposed to, as well as risks that the broader community might face if they are exposed because of the processes conducted at a facility. There are 5 areas of operation where risk is heightened. Items will arrive at the facility in a variety of states, some fully intact and still operating. Some will be damaged and some will be in bits. Workers will need to deal with leaked contaminants, sharp edges and broken glass. And care is also needed when items arrive stacked and shrunk wrapped. Items can fall and break when they are unwrapped. When workers begin to sort through the items, they are exposed to greater risk of coming into direct contact with hazardous materials. Dust can be created that can contain harmful materials. Sharp edges and broken glass need to be dealt with. Partially charged batteries can give electric shocks and so on. Not everything will be processed right away, and if items are not correctly stored, workers can come into contact with contaminants and hazardous materials as they leach into the working and wider environment. Manual processes include testing for reuse as well as disassembly. Workers may be exposed to contaminants that may have leaked from broken materials or hazardous dust from grinding, cutting, and soldering operations. Inhalation or ingestion of harmful dust and vapors is a key risk here. And additionally, the processes may form secondary substances which can be equally as, and sometimes more, harmful, such as dioxins and furans. You can learn more about these chemicals by clicking the link in the description below labeled UPOPs. Once all the processes are complete, there remains further risk if the materials are incorrectly stored, particularly if left uncovered outside. Environmental concerns relate to the risks to the environment. As we have seen, e-waste can be toxic. It's not biodegradable, and contaminants from it can accumulate in the environment or in the soil, in the air, water, and ultimately in living things like you and me. There are 3 areas of environmental concern when it comes to e-waste. Lead, mercury, dioxins, furans, and more can all be released to the air during the recycling process. These are highly toxic. They cause reproductive and developmental problems. They damage the immune system and can cause cancer. Discharges from accidents, lack of spill prevention, and runoff from improper storage can contaminate surface water and groundwater. And this can negatively impact access to drinking water, farming, marine life, fishing industries, and tourism. Concentrations of harmful chemicals can contaminate soil near e-waste recycling facilities that do not practice ESM, especially those with incineration or open burning. This leads to failed crops and a decline in animal and human health. And beyond the immediate and local environmental impacts is the wider issue of sustainability. E-waste contains many examples of precious and rare metals such as neodymium, americium, europium. Europium is what makes blue LEDs blue. Indium, Gold is commonly used in electrical connectors and heat deflectors, and cobalt used in batteries. Not only are these metals rare, mining and processing them requires a huge amount of energy. This creates huge amounts of CO2, one of the principal causes of climate change. And by extracting them from e-waste so that they can be used again in the manufacture of new items is up to 10 times more energy efficient and produces up to 80% less CO2 compared to mining and processing virgin material. Some people hold on to e-waste because they believe that all these rare materials are valuable. But the fact is, around 40 mobile phones contain 1 gram of gold. So the cost and effort of extracting that gold would render it worthless. The true value is to the environment, the preservation of natural resources and the reduction in emissions that lead to climate change. So, with the risks identified, the next step is to consider their likelihood of occurrence and level of impact when they do occur. This helps to prioritize action and focus effort and investment where it is needed the most. To do this, we use a matrix like this that you'll find in the training manual. So, for example, if we look at the risk of broken glass, we can say that there is a high probability of this occurring, but the impact of that risk is medium or even low. Once these have been established, you can then consider what is needed to remove, manage, or control these risks. This might include staff training, operator qualification testing, personal protective equipment, spill kits, and container upgrades. You can then develop a detailed risk mitigation plan, a comprehensive strategy used to mitigate risk within the organization. In the training manual, you will find a risk assessment template that will help you to develop your own risk mitigation plan. This can then be used to prepare a health, safety, and environment, or HSE for short, manual that sets out the standard operating procedures of your business and is a critical part of implementing ESM. Our HSE management system provides a set of administrative controls to ensure safe work practices. It facilitates environmental and worker health decision-making, facilitating compliance whilst improving overall performance. The manual should follow a simple plan, do, check, act model comprising 5 components. Policy. This is a statement of objectives, targets, and programs to achieve ESM. Planning frameworks that identify the environmental aspects of its activities which could have a significant impact on health and the environment. Then, how to control those impacts, identifying all applicable laws, and develop environment, health, and safety objectives for the EHS management system. The means of implementing the processes to control and improve the procedures that are critical for environmental and worker health and safety. The key output here is a set of standard operating procedures. Monitoring, measuring, and checking to make sure that the HSE management system is being implemented and is achieving its objectives and targets. Management should review the HSE management system at least once a year to ensure that it remains suitable and effective. It's worth noting that it's possible to certify your HSE management system to international standards. There are also certifications specifically for refurbishers and recyclers of used and end-of-life electronic products. Certifications publicly verify your processes, which gives you a strong competitive advantage, so they are well worth having. And having them means you can also bid for government and public sector contracts, where certification is often a precondition applied to tenders. There's more information on this in the training manual. Let's now look at how ESM and HSE is applied. We're going to use the example of end-of-life mobile phones, but the basic principles and processes apply to any type of e-waste. To start, We need to make sure that workers are provided with the correct personal protection equipment: eye protection, head protection, hand protection, skin protection, foot protection, hearing protection, respiratory protection. Static discharge is another risk associated with e-waste. There are special gloves and aprons designed to protect against this, so make sure workers have these. Using the wrong tools can be a risk in their own right. Screwdrivers can slip, and static can cause sparks, which can ignite dust and lint that may be present. So always make sure workers have the right tools for the right job, which as a minimum should include precision screwdrivers, mobile phone opener, tweezers, anti-static wrist straps, anti-static safe mat. You need to make sure workers have sufficient containers of the right type to store the materials as they are removed. Always try to use recycled, recyclable, or biodegradable containers. For components that contain hazardous materials such as mercury, it is necessary to provide containers with a secure lid. Storage is needed for any business involved in e-waste, including repairers and refurbishers. You may need to keep things to one side whilst working on another part, or replace parts, so having the correct storage is vital. The workspace where the work will be carried out should be well lit, clutter-free, and clean. And be sure to only use safe cleaning solutions where possible. Check the label and safety data sheet for these products to make sure they are used in the right way and disposed of responsibly. The most common hazards when repairing mobile phones are electric shock, burns from hot soldering irons, eye injuries, and respiratory issues from inhaling solder fumes or dust. Making sure all these measures are in place will greatly reduce and even eliminate these risks. We're now ready to get to work. When a customer hands over a phone, a tablet, or computer, check that they have done a factory reset to wipe the memory of any personal data. If they haven't, it's good practice to do this in their presence, if possible. When e-waste arrives at the facility, an initial check should be carried out to make sure that there are no obvious signs of leakage as well as other hazards. Any troublesome items should be stored safely and separately from everything else. And we want to avoid breaking apart perfectly good items if we can. So we need to determine what looks like it could be refurbished or repaired. Initially, this can be done visually. For example, this has clearly seen better days, and it is unlikely that it can be repaired. Whereas, this looks absolutely fine. Used mobile phones that appear serviceable should be evaluated and assessed to determine the extent to which they are suitable for reuse with or without repair. Turn on the handset and check that the display and keys are all functional. And testing the battery with a voltmeter will indicate whether or not the battery is functional. If the phone is working as it should, then reset the operating system, which removes any data left by the previous user. Give it a good clean, and it can be resold. If it's not working, then refer to the troubleshooting guide for the make and model of the phone that you'll find on the manufacturer's website. Follow the steps recommended to ascertain what needs fixing. The most common fixable faults are the battery and screen, both of which can normally be replaced with new ones or ones salvaged from other phones that have other problems. But always make sure you're using the parts specified by the manufacturer. Just because something fits doesn't mean it's the right part for that particular phone. If you're planning on exporting repaired or refurbished phones or any other similar electronic items, it is a legal requirement for you to ensure compliance with the Basel Convention's requirements. This governs technical standards, labeling, and health and safety requirements. Details can be found in the training manual and on the BCRC Caribbean's website. Once you've determined that a phone is beyond repair, it's time to get dismantling. Before you start this process, you need to recognize that you won't be able to break a phone down entirely into its individual materials. Quite apart from the technical limitations of this, each workstation would need over 1,000 containers. Batteries, for example, require highly specialized skills and equipment to recycle them. So you need to determine in advance where the components will be going and what state the recipients require the components to arrive. For example, if there's a company that recycles the CPUs, are they happy for these to arrive still attached to the circuit board, or do they need them removed? Once you've established this, you can start to dismantle the phone. You now have a dismantled phone ready for processing. It is very important that all of the separated components are stored separately and correctly. For example, components containing hazardous materials like mercury should be stored in sealed lid containers like this. And when storing batteries together, always place some tape over the terminals to stop them touching, which can lead to sparks and fire. Computing equipment should be stored indoors. Facilities should always store and handle used computing equipment after refurbishment in a manner that protects the environment and reduces the potential for damage and safeguards workers. Before we finish, I just wanted to briefly talk about take-back schemes. At the moment, in Trinidad and Tobago and across the Caribbean, it's fair to say that e-waste is a post-consumer issue. That is to say that once a manufacturer or retailer has sold a product, they have no legal responsibility for what happens to it at the end of its life. Instead, legal responsibility rests with consumers, requiring that they dispose of the items properly and safely, and with governments, ensuring that consumers have the means to do so. But this is changing. Increasingly, through legislation and moral obligation, key actors in the supply chain are taking increasingly bold steps to close the loop with electronics. So, instead of a phone being sold, used, and then thrown away when the user gets a new one, it gets repaired, refurbished, reused, or recycled. This is being facilitated through take-back schemes. When consumers buy a new phone or electronic device, they are incentivized to bring back their old one by means of discounts, credits, or a cash payment. I mention this because as these schemes continue to gather pace, the number of old devices needing attention is set to grow considerably. So, by adopting ESM practices now means that you are better positioned to capitalize upon this growth in demand for the services you offer. My hope is that this video has been helpful to you and that you can introduce ESM into your business and make a positive difference to your community, Trinidad and Tobago, and the world. Don't forget to download the training manual that contains more information and a host of useful resources. Be a part of the change and visit www.bcrc-caribbean.org for more information. Thanks for watching.